You guys, Erin here, back with another moon update for you. But let me first make a super exciting announcement. I am going to be interviewing my number one all-time favorite astrologer slash teacher of astrology, especially for medical astrology and vocational astrology, the one and only astrologer, Judith Hill. Judith is the founder and the creator of the Academy for Astrological Medicine. She has authored so many books at this point, I think I have lost count. Judith was basically raised with astrology from day one in her household. So she is absolutely profound. I have been studying this woman's work for the last 6 years, and most of everything I know about medical astrology has come from Judith. She is absolutely amazing. So it's going to be a huge honor and a treat to bring her on this channel. So be looking for that post. That should come out later sometime next week. In fact, it'll come out shortly after what we're going to talk about next, the next exciting announcement, the next new moon coming up here in the sign of Pisces. It's a super moon at 1 degree Pisces. Now, this is taking place on Sunday, February 19th. It peaks at 11:05 p.m. Pacific time. So for many of you over on the East Coast or whatever, this will be taking place on actually Monday, February 20th. So you might want to see what time this comes through for your time zone. Now, as with any new moon, this is a time for new beginnings. This is a time to manifest growth that is related to the very mystical sign of Pisces. I know so many of you are on a very strong spiritual journey right now, and this is a time to manifest taking it to the next level. Okay, and really what happens when we have a new moon, okay, so this is a new moon in the sign of Pisces, new super moon in the sign of Pisces. Over these next 6 months, we're just going to be experiencing this opportunity for growth that's related to this sign of Pisces. And approximately 6 months from now, we'll have the full moon in the sign of Pisces. That will be the peak of this growth cycle. Now, I've been working with this moon magic for, I think, 7 years now. And now I would not still continue to do this if I didn't see such positive results. And not only that, but I know so many of my clients, I mean, the return clients, because they see what's happening when we start working with this moon magic and manifesting with the moon. So anytime we have a new moon, what I do is I pull out my journal and I write down the growth that I'd like to experience that's related to the sign it's transiting through. And also what I do is, this is all so unique to each and every one of us. Of course, we're all experiencing a new moon at 1 degree Pisces, but a lot of this, how it affects you specifically, has so much to do with your own natal chart. For the ones who are a little more advanced, where does the sign of Pisces come through your natal chart? You have to know approximately what time you were born to be able to work with this type of depth, but you can see which house in your natal chart the sign of Pisces comes through. If you're using Placidus, then you need to see where 1 degree, 22 minutes Pisces comes through. But regardless, then we can see which area of our life this manifests through. Now, when you get a reading with me, you are offered a free video recording. Of course, I don't record unless you want me to, but most people want the recording. I record the whole reading for you. It's a video recording. So you can go back to that video recording at any time and see which area of your life any of these new moons, full moons, eclipses, anything astrological is coming through for you in your own natal chart. And then if you want to get really advanced, do you have anything near 1 degree Pisces or opposite that, near 1 degree Virgo? Or maybe trining that somewhere near 1 degree Scorpio or 1 degree Cancer. That's when things start to get really, really impressive, especially working with this moon magic. So again, what I do is I pull out my journal, I write down the growth I want to experience, I apply it to the area of my life that it's manifesting through. Then I take gemstones that resonate well with the sign that the moon is transiting through, and I take those gemstones and I put them on top of my journal. Now, preferably, from my experience, it's ideal to write in our journals in the hours leading up to the new moon. But sometimes I do it the day before. And if my schedule is absolutely chaotic, then sometimes very rarely, but sometimes we'll end up having to do it the day after. That is better than nothing. Absolutely, for sure. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm going to break down the details of this sign of Pisces for you. Then I'm also going to pull up the chart and I'm going to show you some really neat things that are going on with this new moon. It's actually some really neat things that we're being offered these opportunities with. So I'm going to pull up the chart and show you that, show you some other prominent astrological forces we'll be receiving at the time of this new moon. And I'm also going to talk about parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Pisces, because these parts of our body become more sensitive when the moon transits through the sign of Pisces, okay? Anytime the moon transits through the sign of Pisces, that's every month, but it's very prominent when it's a new or a full moon in the sign of Pisces. So I will also be offering some herbal remedies, or at least herbs that might potentially help support these parts of our bodies while the moon transits through the sign of Pisces. And I'm also going to mention gemstones, again, that resonate well with this sign of Pisces. Now, if you don't make it to the end of this recording, let me just say this now. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you go and look in the description section, which is just right below this video, then you will see a full extensive list of stones that resonate well with the sign of Pisces. And my source for this information is the Encyclopedia of Crystals, plus other, I've learned all kinds of things from other astrology schools. So there's that. Now let's get started with this sign of Pisces. So Pisces, let's start with the rulerships of Pisces. So Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, okay? In ancient astrology, it's just ruled by Jupiter, okay? That's before Neptune came into the picture. But Jupiter influences things like faith and compassion. Pisces is definitely a sign of faith. It's also a very naturally compassionate sign. Okay, now that Neptunian influence comes in. Now, Neptune rules things like dreams, altered states of consciousness, mysticism, spirituality. It's a very, very unearthly energy. And a lot of that comes from the influence of Jupiter and Neptune. Okay, so that's really what makes Pisces what it is, but it's also what we call the mutable water sign. Now, when I say mutable, what I'm talking about is adaptability. All the mutable signs are very, very adaptable, which can be a huge quality, because adapting into new situations is always nice, or hanging out with all different types of people is always nice. However, with this mutable energy, which we are receiving a ton of mutable energy through this new moon, it can be very difficult for one to stay on track with a goal, because it's like everything is kind of fascinating. It's easy to get sidetracked, because with this mutable energy, it's like swimming along. Pisces is the fish, swimming along and seeing something shiny over here and wanting to swim up to that shiny thing. But at the very last moment, there's something else shiny over here. Oh, wait, no, I want to go this direction to this shiny thing. Oh, wait, no, I want to go this direction to this shiny thing. That's very Piscean energy. Now, this mutable water sign, okay, water, when we're talking about water, we're talking about emotions in astrology. All the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, they are all very much associated with emotions, okay, feeling things very deeply, feeling things emotionally. In fact, a lot of people who have a strong Piscean energy in their natal chart, they need time alone. They need time to just shut the door and sometimes just cry for no reason, okay? This is a very what's the word I'm looking for? Like empathetic and sympathetic and compassionate energy. In fact, the sign of Pisces can be this energy of where, if they see somebody else getting hurt, just by nature, that sign of Pisces almost feels it themselves and wants to be of service, wants to help. Okay. When we're talking about being of service, this sign is opposition with Virgo. Virgo is the sign of being of service. So there is a little connection there. So Pisces is, again, this energy that has a lot to do with healing. The sign of Pisces can definitely be natural healers, especially if it involves some type of spiritual practice. Okay. Now, also, as I mentioned, Pisces is ruled by the fish, but it's actually two fish that are tied together. Now, they're tied together because one fish wants to go swim off into the spirit realm and live in utopia. The other fish is in the physical realm and is like, no, we have these very, human material responsibilities we have to take care of before we get to go swim off into the spirit realm. Okay, so that's the two fish. In fact, Pisces rules the feet. That's one of the parts of the body that Pisces rules. It is sometimes said that Pisces will have one foot in the spirit realm and one foot in the physical. With people who have a strong Piscean energy in their natal chart, they can have this tendency to kind of go off into daydream land, sometimes even having a very difficult time in school because they're just daydreaming about something that seems so much more important or so much more fascinating than what they are being, communicated about or being told about. So Pisces is a very, very dreamy, very spiritual, very mystical energy, a very diffusive energy. And on that note, Pisces is also like this sign of escapism. awesome because it has so much to do with altered states of consciousness. That's Neptune's influence, the sign of Pisces. Again, sometimes Pisces people, I mean, please don't think that I'm suggesting that every single person who has their sun in Pisces is super mystical and dreamy and has a hard time focusing and is very adaptable, because there's so much more to the natal chart. We're just talking about the sign of Pisces in and of itself. But this sign of Pisces can have a tendency to want to escape, especially when it comes to emotions. Things like substances that might take us into altered states of consciousness. And I think probably a huge portion of my audience knows that I am a ganja farmer and I love to dabble in things like psilocybin. I have absolutely no problem with going into altered states of consciousness. However, I really do feel strongly it needs to be done in a safe manner without addiction getting involved. But the point is, we're receiving, we're going to have the sun and the moon in Pisces, and we're going to have Neptune in Pisces pretty strongly conjunct Venus in Pisces in her anaretic degree of Pisces. So there may be this very strong craving to go into altered states of consciousness. In fact, if you're somebody who's dabbling in things like ayahuasca or something like that, or even if you're just somebody who has a couple glasses of wine in the evening, you might feel a more potent trip or feeling, again, that altered state. It might become more prominent with all this Pisces energy that we are receiving. So just be careful of that. But overall, the goal is here, how do you want to grow in these ways? How do you want to grow in the ways related to the sign of Pisces? Do you want to become more psychic? Pisces is very much associated with psychic capabilities. Again, that comes from Neptune's influence. Neptune has this influence of psychic porousness, as in the boundaries. Pisces does not have boundaries, okay? Especially when it comes to those, the intuition is so strong because the psychic boundaries are almost non-existent for this sign of Pisces. It'll unintentionally pick up psychic energies. Now, maybe that's something that you want to work on. Maybe you want to enhance your psychic capabilities, or overall, maybe you just want, again, to take your spiritual journey to a whole nother level. And again, it is very exciting to see which area of your life this comes through your natal chart, so you can apply it to that. But overall, I would just set the intentions, pull out the journal, write down how you want to grow in these ways. Maybe you want to get more in touch with your sensitivities, with your emotions. Maybe you're somebody who's been blocking out emotions and not wanting to feel your own emotions. This is a time to set your intentions to grow with that. Okay, so there's that. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull up the chart and show you what else is going on with this new super moon at 1 degree Pisces. Okay, so for those of you who are new to my recordings, what I work with is geocentric Western astrology. So with that said, we put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. This is basically a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. Now, let's start by talking about this right here is the sun. This right here is the moon. All these little symbols, technically called glyphs, are for the celestial bodies. Okay, here's Mars, here's Uranus, here's Chiron, here's Jupiter, here's Venus, here's Neptune. We're going to start with the sun and the moon, which are right here where my mouse are moving. Okay, now I should mention this real quick. This chart right here is based on my location, okay? In Santa Cruz, California. If you live in other parts of the world and you take the time to pull up the chart, the new moon chart where you are based, this sun and the moon could be in other parts of the chart. If you're over in the UK or something, it'll probably be up here. You'll see the sun and the moon up here. But that's because it's based on your location. However, it's still going to be at 1 degree Pisces for everybody. The whole darn zodiac moves, okay, depending on your location. So don't put too much emphasis on that. And by the way, when I was mentioning the houses earlier, which area of your life this comes through, when I'm talking about the houses, I'm talking about these things that look like a slice of pie. Look for this little symbol right here. Look for the symbol for Pisces. Again, technically called the glyph for Pisces. Which slice of pie or which area of your life, which house in your natal chart does this sign of Pisces come through? Because that's how you're going to know which area of your life it comes through for you specifically. Okay, but again, that's too much for some people, and I totally get that. But okay, so here's the sun, here's the moon, 1 degree and 22 minutes Pisces. Okay, first of all, I love that. It's 1 1 2 2 2. It's like magically numerological. Okay, now anytime we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are in the same spot. Okay. They're in the exact same degree, to the same minute, in the same sign of the zodiac. And I like to describe this as, in traditional Western astrology, it's like the moon is the mother. the sun is the father. And anytime we have a new moon, it means this mother and the father are coming together. And it's like they're creating this energetic baby. Okay. This baby that grows over the next 6 months until we have the full moon in the sign of Pisces. That's why we're offered this opportunity for growth related to this sign. Okay. Now, at 1 degree, this is very, very prominent. Once anything starts to get past 2.5 degrees, it really starts to blend in with other zodiac signs, especially once it gets past 10 degrees. But at 1 degree, this is like the purest form of Piscean energy we could have. Okay, so this is very, very mystical, very dreamy energy. Now, also, one of the first things I'm going to point out here is, okay, so here's Neptune right here going through the sign of Pisces, which we've talked a lot about this over the past few years. Neptune going through Pisces. I mean, personally, I think it's a wonderful time to be alive while Neptune's going through Pisces because it is a very spiritual energy. Again, Neptune rules the sign of Pisces. So it's at home in the sign of Pisces. It works comfortably here. This is why so many people are having these wild spiritual awakenings. People's intuitions are being heightened. Again, so much of this really depends on your own natal chart. But as a collective here, Neptune going through Pisces is very, very mystical energy. But on that note, it can also be it can be a delusional. As I've mentioned before in my recordings, this can be a delusional energy. And I do unfortunately see a lot of people being deluded. A lot of people, there's all this stuff about misinformation. It's like magic. People are being tricked. Okay. It's like, this is charlatan type of energy. It's magic, and not all magic is good magic. Okay. So just again, it's like, be very mindful of that, where you're getting your information from, the source of information, that you're receiving. Always double check that stuff. And not only that, but I think it's personally so important that we be independent thinkers and think, does this really make sense? When you're hearing something on the news or seeing something on social media, or whatever it is, does this really make sense, or am I being tricked right now? The sign of Pisces can have a tendency to be victimized, okay, or kind of like easily manipulated. And Neptune going through Pisces, all this Pisces energy going on, woof, it's pretty wild. Almost makes me question all this stuff that's being said about UFOs being shot down. Okay, that's a whole nother story though. Okay, now next we're going to talk about this right here is Venus going through Pisces. Okay, so Venus, this is her favorite place to be. She exalts in the sign of Pisces. She loves being in Pisces because Venus rules love and romance and what we're attracted to in art and beauty. And Pisces is this very flowy, feminine, sort of romantic energy, or at least Venus gets to be highly romanticized here. But Venus is at 29 degrees and 57 minutes Pisces. It really doesn't get any more anaretic than that. When I'm talking about anaretic, I'm talking about the 29th degree. The 29th degree, in my opinion, is like the danger zone. Okay, that's where like the energy is, because there's literally pros and cons to everything in astrology. Every house, every sign, every aspect, everything in astrology. There's going to be qualities, and then things that are not so much quality. And with the 29th degree, it's almost like the shadow side of that influence can come through. So this is almost, it could be extra delusional, extra easily manipulated, extra wanting to go into escapism, extra, wanting that third glass of wine, extra, geez, I just want to be high right now. That's very well could be the case for a lot of people with Venus going through Pisces. But if we look at the qualities of this is, again, like hyper spirituality. Okay. This is a lot of people could be walking very, very dreamy at the time of this new moon. In some ways it's beautiful, but in other ways it's like we're missing some good, strong, grounded earth energy to keep things practical. Okay, so that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, now something else to mention here. I love this. This is what I was excited to talk about. This right here is Saturn, who's finishing up in Aquarius. We've talked a lot about Saturn going through Aquarius over the past few years because he's been there basically since early in 2020, but then moved into he was in Capricorn. Saturn was in Capricorn in 2020, popped into Aquarius, but then retrograded back into Capricorn. And basically, I believe it's been since December of 2020 that Saturn has been going through Aquarius. Now he's finally changing signs. Like, I think it's 13 days. I think it's March 7th. Saturn goes from Aquarius into Pisces. Okay. Now, I've loved Saturn going through Aquarius. I really have. On a personal note, I've just felt like this has brought a lot of structure to humanitarian groups. I feel like Saturn has helped a lot of people build not only physical buildings and establishments for groups that are support the people for the people, rather than just trying to receive help from the government. The sign of Aquarius is really the sign of humanitarianism, and I've seen Saturn providing structure for that type of the buildings of even just groups getting structured for humanitarianism. Okay, but what's going to happen next year is Saturn on March 7th is going to move into Pisces. Now, again, there's pros and cons to this, of course, because Saturn he brings discipline and responsibilities and structure. And Saturn's super strict. He's like the old man. He rolls time and he's grumpy and he doesn't like change. Saturn wants to stick with the old ways of doing things. Versus Pisces is like, woo, like super mystical, dreamy energy. And Saturn doesn't get to behave the way he really wants to in the sign of Pisces. However, and of course, this is going to impact us all very uniquely. And again, that depends on your own natal chart. But what I love about this, like what I'm seeing here, it's awesome. Okay, because here we have this new super moon in the purest form of Pisces at 1 degree. And then just shortly after that, Saturn moves into Pisces and is going to be there all the way, I believe it's until March of 2026. Saturn's going to be bringing structure to this sign of Pisces. So if you think about it this way, you're setting the intentions for how you want to grow in the ways that are related to the sign of Pisces. Now, sometimes that can get a little too delusional or a little dreamy or whatever. But then Saturn moves in there and he's like, all right, we set the intention. We want to grow in this way. We want to entrepreneur a spiritual practice. You know, I want to take my yoga practice. I'm a yoga teacher, which I'm not. I'm just saying this, making things up to help you guys understand what I'm saying here. You're a yoga teacher and you want to bring more spirituality into your yoga classroom, spirituality into your practice. Okay, now again, that for some people, because not everybody on earth is walking around craving some sort of a spiritual practice. So for some people, honestly, sadly, that can even be made fun of. Okay, but if you're doing it, you got Saturn there to support you, and is like, yeah, okay, sure, we can get mystical here, but we need to do it with structure. We need to build this slowly with practicality, responsibilities, discipline. We need to be wise about this. Saturn can definitely bring wisdom. Saturn is like a teacher, a really strict teacher. And not only that, but he usually teaches some really tough lessons. But if we're listening to the teacher and we're following the curriculum with structure, Saturn will reward us. Okay. So this is a great introduction. This new moon in Pisces is a great introduction for bringing Saturn into Pisces. All right. I hope I made sense of that for you guys. Okay. The next thing I'm going to talk about is this beautiful aspect that's coming off. Okay. So this right here is the South Node. I know a lot of you heard me talk a lot about the South Node because the nodes are probably my favorite thing to talk about because they're freaking fascinating. But the South Node is another very spiritual point. Okay. It's like the point of self undoing. The South Node is where celestial energy goes out. Now, just for those of you who are new to my recordings, you've never heard of the nodes before. Let me just briefly give you a little touch on what these guys are. Here's the North Node over here. Let me make myself a little smaller so you can see the North Node. This right here is the North Node. This right here is the South Node. They're always opposite each other and they work hand in hand. The North Node over here is where celestial energy comes in. Okay, remember I work with geocentric Western astrology, so Earth right here. The North Node brings energy into us and the South Node takes energy out. Okay, this is basically like the drain point. Now, the North Node right here is material, physical, okay? The South Node is detaching from the physical. The South Node is spiritual. It doesn't want anything to do with the material. It's the dragon's tail. Okay. The South Node is the dragon's tail. The North Node is the dragon's head. And they both can definitely be very abrupt, but they're also extremely powerful, especially going through the signs that they have been going through since January of 2022. Okay. What I'm talking about here is here's the South Node again, the spiritual point, the this point of self-undoing, the point of detaching from the physical, the exit point, the drain point, going through the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is also another very spiritual energy, but it's more of like an energy that the spiritual energy has more to do with things like going into the underworld, okay, the depth, the scary stuff. It's the sign of transformation. And what I'm talking, and please don't get me wrong, I love the sign of Scorpio. It absolutely fascinates me. It's my sister sign, okay? But this sign of Scorpio, it rules over the entire excretory system. The sign of Scorpio is, it rules the colon, it rules the sweat glands, any part of our body where things go out, the sign of Scorpio rules. And here it is going through the drain point of the celestial energies. With that said, the South Node works very powerfully going through the sign of Scorpio. It's like taking energy out, especially like darker energies, especially when I talk about that, when Scorpio being sort of associated with the underworld and darker energies, what I'm talking about is it's the sign of transformation that can be exposed to the dark, scary stuff, but then transform, okay, be empowered by that. Okay, that's the spiritual energy that comes with that sign of Scorpio. Very, very prominent placement here. Now, again, as I mentioned, the South Node can be a little abrupt. The North Node, and because they're the dragon. Again, the South Node is a dragon's tail. It can whip all over the place and be very dramatic. But here, right here, we have what we call either the lot of fortune or the part of fortune. And just to be clear, there are a couple different ways of calculating this. Personally, I like what my software is using here. And the point I'm trying to get at here, wherever this is, wherever this part of fortune is, it can bring some fortunate energy in. And not only that, but it can kind of like mitigate the abruptness or the downside of this South Node going through Scorpio. Okay, I'll just say it this way. The South Node going through Scorpio, again, so much of this depends on your own natal chart. Do you have anything near 6 degrees Scorpio? Because if you do, there's probably something being taken out of your life. Okay, the South Node going through Scorpio can, really the South Node going through anything, can remove things from our life. And sometimes there are things that we're attached to and we don't want them to go away. Okay, if we set our intentions, what do we want to let go of? Okay, then that often can really help mitigate things. But overall, the South Node can take things away from us. And this part of fortune being right here can help that not be as dramatic, not, oh my gosh, I lost my journal or whatever it is, something along those lines. The part of fortune being right there. Okay, now what I'm really getting at here is these blue lines that go from here to here. This is, again, the sun and the moon right here. They are harmonizing. That's what these lines are. They're called trines. They're approximately 120-degree angle, all calculated through geometry. And they're harmonizing. So it's like, to put this all in a nutshell for you, here's this new moon with great opportunities for new beginnings that have to do with spiritual practices. And then it's in this harmonious connection with the point of self-undoing, the point of letting things go. So this is also, it's this perfect opportunity to let go of the things that are not serving your spiritual practice, but make room for the new beginnings and expand on that. All right. Hope I made sense there. Now let's see. We'll briefly touch on Mars going through Gemini, because this is actually kind of neat. Even though I'm not a fan of Mars going through Gemini, and please don't get me wrong, as I've mentioned in other recordings, just because I'm talking about this doesn't mean that if you have Mars and Gemini in your natal chart, I don't like that placement or anything like that. I've got family members and some very close friends who have Mars and Gemini, and they're super fun and excitable people who always have something to do, and they're always it's like very active energy. But in my opinion, Mars gets frustrated in the sign of Gemini. And the reason I say that is because Mars is about penetration. He wants to move forward. He rules our physical drive. The sign of Gemini is the sign of duality. It's the twins. I mean, just look at the glyph for the sign of Gemini. It's the twins. So here, Mars is like, I want to go. I want to penetrate directly, but I don't know which way to go. He gets a little frustrated here. Not only that, but Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and Mercury and Mars really don't get along as well. Okay, but on that note, okay, here, let's talk about Mercury. Here's Mercury. Okay, now Mercury is going through 12 degrees Aquarius. This is a wonderful place for Mercury. Mercury, this is his exalted place. And the reason for this is because Mercury really rules like our mental function, has so much to do with our communication skills. And communication is really the ultimate goal of where I'm going with this. So just follow along here if you can. Mercury is the messenger of the gods and has so much to do with our communication skills, but again, also has a lot to do with the organization of our conscious awareness. Okay. The sign of Aquarius is the genius of the zodiac. It's the friendly genius, revolutionary, friendly genius of the zodiac. So Mercury's like, yes, here he gets to be a genius. Mercury gets to function optimally here. Okay. So again, this has to do with communication skills and also has to do with mental function. And he's harmonizing with Mars in Mercury's own sign up here in Gemini. Okay. So might be busy mind kind of energy, like concentrating, but also at the same time, neurons are connecting at a rapid pace. But this can be so good for communication skills, in my opinion. Okay, if you want to set time for a business meeting, or, there's this very important thing that you've been wanting to say to a certain person, or say you've been wanting to like launch a new website or post something on social media that's super important. This is a great time to do it. But I think I'd wait maybe a couple days after this new moon. I don't know. You could do it in the days leading up to this new moon, but personally, I would wait for a couple days after this new moon, when the moon's like picking up momentum in her waxing phase. But also, the reason I'm putting so much emphasis on this is because everything's direct. There's nothing in retrograde. I mean, well, except for the nodes, but that's normal. They're almost always in retrograde. Everything is moving forward. Okay. And we've got Mercury, the messenger of the gods who rules communication, harmonizing with his own sign of Gemini, the sign of communication, with Mars's action. Again, Mercury's exalted. So this is great. Personally, I think I might just set something up where there's some important communication skills following this new moon. In fact, I already have. So like I said in the beginning of this, I have arranged an important meeting with Miss Judith Hill. Super excited about that. Okay, so let's see here. Let's mention Pluto over here. Woohoo! Look at that. Anaretic degree, hardcore. So Pluto, we've talked a lot about Pluto, so I'm not going to put too much emphasis on this, but Pluto, I will just describe him as the destroyer. Okay, Pluto brings destruction, but for the purpose of a more powerful rebirth. That's what Pluto does. He creates this process of degeneration for a more powerful regeneration. Okay, that's what Pluto does. He also reveals secrets. Okay, he's the ruler of the underworld. He's Hades. He's dark, man, but he's awesome, in my opinion. He's also sometimes referred to as the planet of power because he's so powerful. He can make somebody powerful as long as we're working with his energy. Let's just go with the word properly. All right. But here we go again, 29 degrees. Wow. Anaretic degree through the sign of Capricorn, which Capricorn rules things like government. Okay. The structure of our civilization. And this is in the danger zone. I do think there's a lot going on. There's a lot of very, very destructive energy going on to the structure of our civilization and the authoritarian establishments. I do see secrets being revealed. Okay. Things are coming to the surface, things that have been hidden for so long. And not only that, but Pluto is going to, in March, pop into Aquarius, be there for a few months. It's like the destroyer, Pluto. He's peeking his head in to the sign of Aquarius, says, hey, ready to create some destruction here too. Aquarius is a sign that really is very much associated with humanity, by the way. So things are going to get very interesting. But then Pluto is going to retrograde back into the anaretic degree of Capricorn. And then eventually, I think it's either December of 2023 or January of 2024, Pluto pops back into Aquarius. And it's like Pluto's doing this dance between the sign that rules over authoritarian establishments and things like traditions and the government and the structure of our civilization, all this stuff. Pluto's dancing between that and the sign that rules over humanity, the sign that rules, I'm talking about Aquarius now, humanity, technology, revolutionary type of energy. The destroyer, Pluto, dancing back and forth between the cusps of those two energies. So wow. Okay. This is very, very powerful, but I don't want to scare anybody. I keep telling this to clients because I know a lot of people are freaking out. A lot of people are like, what in the world is going on? We're getting blasted with chemtrails, toxic energy, toxic food. It's like, it's almost impossible to find something that's fully nourishing in a regular grocery store that doesn't have some sort of poison in it. And I know people are freaking out, but it's important, in my opinion, to remember that humanity has made it through some very, very tragic times, extremely tragic times. Okay. Looking back just over what we have for recorded history, we know there's been some very, very powerful destructive energies, and humanity has made it through that. So in my opinion, I think we're going to be okay, especially if we know how to work with these energies, especially if we're staying grounded, staying strong, keeping our vessel strong, keeping our immunity strong. I'm going to talk about immunity in a minute here. Okay, so let's see here. What else do we got to talk about? Let's talk about, briefly touch on Uranus going through Taurus. Okay, Uranus influences very abrupt energy. Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius. Aquarius is associated with technology. Okay, that's coming from Uranus's influence. Uranus is like zappy, spasmodic. Okay, going through the sign of Taurus. We've talked a lot about this, so I don't want to go into too much detail. I'm talking about in previous videos. Taurus is like the earth of the earth signs. Taurus is fixed, stable, grounded earth energy, doesn't want to budge. And Uranus is very debilitated here. Uranus is bringing abrupt, zappy energy into a sign, or to the energy that doesn't want that at all. Okay, Taurus is like, what is going on? I'm getting hit with it like lightning constantly. And this transit, I think, goes all the way until 2026. Okay, so this is a slow moving transit. But what's nice is it's also bringing some very revolutionary energies into Earth. But what is also great is earlier, again, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I've talked about it so many times, but this right here, again, is the North Node, the dragon's head, where celestial energy comes in, can also be very abrupt. Throughout the year of 2022, Uranus and the North Node were pretty darn close together. And that was very kind of earth shattering a little, because Taurus rules money, okay? It rules things like the monetary systems, banking systems, that sort of thing. As soon as that North Node and Uranus became close together, I think it was in March of 2020 when they really started getting close together, boom, inflation up the wazoo. I mean, and not only that, but Taurus also has a lot to do with agricultural systems. So that was pretty wild. But they are now separating. As I mentioned a little earlier, the nodes are almost always in retrograde, okay? Uranus is now moving forward, but the North Node is basically going backwards. So they're separating. Now that could be nice. Who knows? Maybe cryptocurrencies will go up. Something could go on. Something that involves our monetary systems, banking, or again, agricultural systems. Things might actually kind of slow down a little bit there. Maybe, something very well could happen with that type of energy. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm talking about there. And again, please keep in mind that so much of this depends on your own natal chart. Okay. That's why the readings are so incredibly helpful for you to get familiar with your chart, so you can see which area of your life any of this stuff is coming through. Where does the sign of Taurus come through your own natal chart? Because that's going to make a difference on how that impacted you personally. Okay. Now, lastly, let's touch on these guys, because this is also kind of neat. All right. So here's Chiron going through the sign of Aries. This is another slow moving celestial body Chiron is most commonly described as the wounded healer, okay, who has a lot to do with wounds that we receive from early childhood development. What happens is we go through our life and we experience transits and progressions and all sorts of things that will give us opportunity to heal those wounds from early childhood development. And when we heal them, we become healers ourselves. Okay. Now, Chiron going through Aries, the sign of self, I see this as a very strong opportunity for people to really work on healing themselves. Now, I've talked about that plenty of times in previous recordings. But what's going on now is Jupiter's creeping up on Chiron. Now, again, this is so difficult. It's all going to be unique for everybody. But as a collective, and on the positive note here, what we could look at as a quality here, Jupiter can bring, going through the sign of Aries can bring action, can bring, okay, Jupiter's revving up, he's hot, and because Aries is hot. Aries is, it's the cardinal fire sign, the warrior. And here's Jupiter revving up like a warrior going through the sign of Aries, getting close to the wounded healer. It's the sign of self. Let's take care of ourselves. Let's heal ourselves. Okay, so well, I think I'm gonna leave it there because I feel like this recording is already getting too long. So let's move on to talk about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Pisces. I think I already mentioned that Pisces is most commonly associated with feet, rules the feet, okay? A lot of Pisces will have very sensitive feet. You know, if you've got a 3 degrees Pisces sun, you might have a sensitive heel. If you've got a 28-degree Pisces sun, you might have sensitive toes. For the advanced ones who are following along here, what I'm talking about here is the earlier degrees of the sign of Pisces rule like where the heel is. And as we go throughout that sign of Pisces, it gets closer to the tips of the toes. But as this moon transits over the next couple, well, from, let's see, this will be approximately the 19th of February to the 21st of February, depends on, again, your location. But all of our feet might become more sensitive. And again, it's very unique to each and every one of us. You could end up stubbing your toe or something random like that, or maybe not be impacted at all. Again, depends on your own natal chart, but just, you know, pay a little extra attention to your feet. But moreover, what's more important, Pisces rules the lymphatic system, okay? A lot of people who have, say, a challenged sun in Pisces will end up with issues with the lymphatic system, the lymphatic system that gets stagnant or stuck or that sort of thing. Now, with this new moon in Pisces, yes, our lymphatic system may become like sensitized. We may, you know, even be able to feel what's, you know, all of a sudden there's like a lump that shows up or something like that. But what's most important to realize here is that because this is a new moon and we've got Saturn about to move into Pisces to bring that structure, personally, I see this as a perfect opportunity to set our intentions to start taking better care of our lymphatic system. I think the lymphatic system often gets overlooked because it's not something that, you know, it's not like our lungs or our eyes or our hands or something, you know, it's something we don't see and we don't think about all the time. But I do feel like there's a lot of people who are having lymphatic problems these days. And again, that might have something to do with Neptune going through Pisces. But personally, what I like to do, I mean, there's all kinds of exercises. I've heard a lot of people talk about working with the lymphatic system. We need to do slow motions, which I'm personally not good at. I'm more like, I like to do things quickly, but that's, you know, something to take into consideration. Of suppose you could just look stuff up on the internet or, you know, find somebody on Instagram who focuses on lymphatic system and focus on them. But for herbal remedies, personally, I really like something called red root. And also I've had super good results from golden seal. Those are my 2 favorite herbs for helping to keep the lymphatic system moving healthfully. Okay. So, but let me say this, I am not a doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor, and you should probably check in with your healthcare practitioner before dabbling in any of these herbs that I recommend. I've never had any problem with them, but of course, you know, who knows, maybe you're allergic or something like that. Always start gentle. I've been dabbling in all kinds of different herbs for many, many years now. Never had a problem. But again, that doesn't mean that nobody will have a problem. Okay. Also, not only that, but sometimes herbs can interfere with, you know, if you're taking some sort of a prescription or something like that. Okay, so we mentioned the golden seal and the red root, but I also wanted to mention, oh shoot, what was it? Oh, that's what it is. Okay, Pisces and Virgo are opposite each other. I mentioned this earlier. When the signs that are opposite each other, they kind of work together. There's a magnetic polarity going on there. Now, Virgo rules like basically the physical health of a body, okay? Rule at the base, what I'm getting at here is the polarity between Pisces and Neptune has actually a huge influence on the entire immune system. And when I'm talking about the immune system, because I have seen posts that are like, there's no such thing as an immune system, which, okay, I can understand that perspective. But what I'm talking about here is building up your own physical immunity. So you're immune to, you know, things like viruses and all sorts of things. You know, there's so many different ways to keep your immunity strong. I'm somebody who's constantly, oh, okay, grapefruit seed extract today. Oh, wait, no, okay, coated silver today. Oh, wait, no, oil of oregano. I'm always dabbling in all these things because I want to keep my immune system strong. But my very favorite, which is also a very gentle way of keeping the immune system strong, is medicinal mushrooms. Okay. And I'm not talking about psychedelic psilocybin right now. I'm talking about reishi, chaga, turkey tail, lion's mane. There's and I like to take all of them and blend them up together. In fact, you could even get them in like little capsule forms these days. You can get a blend of medicinal mushrooms in a bottle. So it's super easy. I'm somebody who's been harvesting my own mushrooms for years now, so a little more advanced on this topic, but medicinal mushrooms work gently for the immune system, but they also build strength. They're very, very powerful, but also very gentle for taking care of the immune system. So that's something else to take into consideration. Okay, now let's get into gemstones. The dedicated zodiacal birthstone for the sign of Pisces is aquamarine. This is a beautiful piece of aquamarine right here. Now, aquamarine is mostly, like, if you look it up, you're going to read that it was said to protect anybody who's traveling overseas, okay, like on a ship or a boat or even an airplane, said to protect people who are traveling overseas. However, there's a lot more to it. Now, I think I mentioned this before. I'd grab this book, but then I'd have to jump off camera. The Encyclopedia of Crystals I've read a lot about this. And again, I've read about stuff from other sources as well. But it's a super dreamy, it's no question in my mind why this aquamarine is related to the sign of Pisces, because it's very dreamy, it's very mystical, and can also enhance things like psychic capabilities. Okay, so this is a gemstone that I will definitely be placing on my journal after I enter into my journal that the hours leading up to the new moon. But another stone that's very Piscean, this right here, is fluorite, which fluorite usually comes in like this green or purple color. It also comes in yellow. I think it comes in a couple other different colors as well. But fluorite also resonates very, very well with the sign of Pisces, but it's also, again, super, super dreamy. So what I'm going to add, I like to work with trinities. I usually, not always, but will take 3 crystals that resonate well with the sign that the moon is transiting through and put those 3 crystals on top of my journal. And what I'm doing here, right here, what we have is something called bloodstone, which also oddly is very much resonates well with the sign of Pisces. With other signs as well, it's also very much an Aries stone, but it's also usually more associated with later on in the Pisces season, like towards the middle of March, that sort of thing. But regardless, the reason why I'm adding bloodstone in there, A, because it resonates well with the sign of Pisces, but B, because it's grounding. It's a lot more stabilizing, okay? Like these stones here are the dreamy, mystical fluorite and aquamarine. Sure, they might resonate really well with that flowy Piscean moon energy, but then we want something that's going to keep us a little more connected to Earth too, as well. Now, in my opinion, it's a really good idea to use something that's a little more like clear. Okay, do I have a clear stone here? No, not right in front of me. But regardless, this is a little more like of a clear stone versus this is not clear at all, right? This is going to amplify the words that I have just spelled out in my journal. It's going to amplify and make them a bigger deal, sort of a Jupiterian way. But this is going to keep them a little more protected, keep the unwanted energies out of my prayers. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. All right. Now I feel like I've rambled on a little too long, so I'm going to end it here. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please visit my website, erinwageastrology.com. If you are on a phone or a tablet, look for the menu bar at the top. It's 3 little lines. Click there. It'll say book online, and then it's super easy from that point on. Okay, guys, I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.